Hello, fellow cyborgs, and welcome to my Torathon Readathon wrap-up. This was held by Libby Stevenson last weekend from the 19th to the 21st of April, and the purpose of this was to read the shorter fiction available through Tor, specifically Tor.com. I read 13 things, 1 novella, 5 poems, and 7 short stories, and I'm going to briefly tell you about them all. So the first thing I picked up was All Systems Red. This is the first novella in the Murderbot Diaries series by Martha Wells. I have seen One Book, One Review and Libby Stevenson speak very highly of this series and decided to give it a try. I really enjoyed it. Murderbot was a very lovable, socially anxious AI character. I really enjoyed being in Murderbot's head most of all. The action wasn't as enthralling as just hanging out with Murderbot, but this was definitely quite enjoyable. I gave All Systems Red 4 out of 5 stars. Next, I read Night's Slow Poison by Ann Leckie. This is a science fiction short story set in the same universe as the Imperial Rotch trilogy, which begins with the novel Ancillary Justice. I enjoyed this and gave it 3 out of 5 stars. Overall, I feel like the ending was a little bit too ambiguous for me. I was kind of left feeling, rather than, oh. But it was really enjoyable to get back into Ann Leckie's writing style. I haven't read the trilogy in quite a number of years, even though it's some of my favorite books. Then I read Jo Walton's poem, Jane Austen Among the Women. This is very short. I ended up giving it 3 out of 5 stars. I don't know that I 100% understood what was going on, but it was still a very likable poem. Then I moved on to the short story, These Deathless Bones by Cassandra Khaw. This is a horror short story with fairy tale elements, turning the idea of the evil stepmother on its head. It also has to do with witchcraft and with children who are not quite so nice. I really enjoyed the writing style, even though this did kind of go there and was a little bit disgusting at times, especially with that child. But overall, I enjoyed it and gave it 3 out of 5 stars. Then I went back to another Jo Walton poem. This one is called Nemi. I really enjoyed the rhythm and the rhythmic language in this poem, but I think that there was a little bit more of a sinister note than I actually fully picked up on, so this was a 3 out of 5 star read. Then I moved on to another horror short story, Dark Warm Heart by Rich Larson. This is about a newlywed couple. The husband has just returned from a research expedition. He's a sort of folklorist in the north of Canada, but he may have brought back an obsession that is much worse than it fully appears at the beginning. This also had a very curious ending that left me with more questions than an actual feeling of satisfaction, but overall this was very atmospheric, bone-chillingly cold, and I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. Then I went to another poem by Jo Walton. This was When We Were Robots in Egypt. This one didn't tickle my fancy quite as much. I don't believe Goodreads has a page for this, but if it did, I would probably have given it 2 out of 5 stars. Then I moved on to another horror short story. This was Excerpts from a Film, 1942 to 1987 by A.C. Wise. I enjoyed this. I feel like the messaging of this had good intentions. The point of this short story is about a young Hollywood starlet who is tragically murdered, and how much Hollywood loves that, and how much Hollywood keeps playing with that story, and how that just objectifies the women who are evilly murdered and traumatized by men. It also brings the Black Dahlia, Elizabeth Short, into this story. I'm not quite sure if the intentions were good or if the execution was good as well. I couldn't quite tell if this story was helping to make women out of these women who have previously been forgotten and objectified, or if it was just kind of objectifying them in a different way. So I really liked the idea, and I was quite fond of this writing style, and I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. Then I jumped to a science fiction short story, Sleeper by Jo Walton. As you can tell, I went to the Jo Walton search results and read almost all of them. This is about the idea of, in the process of writing a biography of someone, you also write an AI program where when people read the book, they can then interact with this AI construct of the person being biographed. being written about. This was an interesting concept, but I feel like the story did a hard left turn at the end and turned into something completely different that I wasn't quite ready for. So again, 3 out of 5 stars. Then I read, also by Jo Walton, another poem, The Jump Rope Rhyme. This was written in honor of International Women's Day with the prompt, "Nevertheless, she persisted." It was fine. I think I gave it 3 out of 5 stars, but I don't think there's a Goodreads page. And then I read the final poem by Jo Walton that I wanted to read, and I think that was also available, Hades and Persephone. This one I quite enjoyed, actually. It looked at the Hades and Persephone myth. I felt like more from a platonic friendship sort of aspect rather than a Beauty and the Beast, highly romanticized, even though kidnapping is involved sort of thing. I found it lighthearted, and I wish that there was a Goodreads page because I would have given it 4 out of 5 stars. The last 2 stories I read were by far my favorites of the readathon. They were both by Lucy Taylor, who is a horror writer. The first short story, In the Cave of the Delicate Singers, is about a cave expedition gone wrong, the rescuers going in to do their job, but then them not being heard from again. Our main protagonist has an interesting form of synesthesia where she feels sound. People have come out of this cave in the past homicidally crazy, and they talk about something they've heard. So she goes into the cave with earplugs, knowing that her synesthesia will make her still able to hear what's going on through the feeling in her body, in the hopes that she can find out what went wrong and hopefully save some people who are left down there. This reminded me kind of Lovecraftian horror, where it's not a monster, it's not people being horrific, it's some unknowable force that is really creepy. I really enjoyed the prose though, as well as the kind of horror in this story. That was definitely a 4 out of 5 star read, and I jumped immediately to see what else Lucy Taylor had available on tour. She had one other story called Sweetlings. This is my kind of post-apocalyptic short story where the coastlines have come on Earth, we are running out of dry land, and we follow this young girl and her father, who is part of one of these poor coastal communities, and these people really are just dying out. Evolution also seems to be speeding up and creating some very creepy sorts of critters who are somehow now able to come out of the water. The end was also really fantastic. It took the story to a next level, and I really enjoyed this. Interestingly, also Sweetlings was listed under science fiction, not horror, but I really think this is a horrific science fiction story, but I don't think it's anything too much for you to handle if you're not into horror on its own. That also got 4 out of 5 stars for me, and I will be on the lookout for future things by Lucy Taylor. So that was my Torathon. Very successful. There were really no duds in what I was reading. I enjoyed quite a bit of what I read and got through quite a lot. Also, I'm excited to find a horror author whose current work, at least, I am really liking. Please let me know in the comments down below if you participated and if you have any suggestions or recommendations of other short stories that I should read for free on the internets. Thank you for watching, and thank you, Libby, for hosting another lovely Torathon. And until next time, continue to be lovely.